Team Jackson, what's happening? So I got a DM from a woman who was basically getting ready to leave her husband, man. And the reason why she was getting ready to leave him is because she didn't feel present in a relationship, or she didn't feel like her presence was really valued. So with that, she was about to give him her absence. And what she was trying to see was whether or not he would even care about that, because it seemed like he didn't care about shit else. So would he even regret losing her once she left, which her mind was kind of made up? And, you know, most people will say, well, why would she even care if she's really going to be leaving him? Well, first off, no matter how bad somebody does you, a piece of you, if you're in love with them or if you do love them still, a piece of you is going to wonder if they ever really loved you. Like, was it ever real? Is any part of it real still? Like, no matter how bad they do you. And secondly, something that a lot of women do, before they walk out that door, they try to assess just how much they should close that door. Should they kind of leave it cracked open, give you a couple of months, maybe a year or two, reconsider after, they probably tested the field or something like that? Or should they close that door, lock it, deadbolt it, put a chair in front of it and snipe anything that tries to walk through? Like, just how much am I letting this guy die to me is sometimes what a woman wants to know before she walks out. And I believe it was the case with this woman, but I told her what I would tell anybody else as it pertains to whether or not a man will regret losing you. First off, yes, it's totally possible and likely if you were a good woman in a relationship. If you weren't the reason for the demise, then more than likely he is going to regret losing you, because hindsight is 20/20. But that's still not a pass for him to do what he's doing, and that's not an obligation for you to take him back or even consider giving him another chance, because regret losing you, missing you, all in the same bucket of emotional states. And you never want to make a decision whether or not a man should be in your life based on his or your emotional state. Emotions change like the wind. But you want to make the decision based on behavioral state, behavioral changes, structure. But just to answer the question directly, how to know whether or not a man will regret losing you, first way I say is, if the things that he's doing to push you away are a part of a phase of his life and they're not the summation of his character, they're not you uncovering who this guy was all along, but rather this is a deviation from who he truly is. And you can tell that by the rest of his life, the context of his life. If it all lines up that this is a guy of a certain type of character, moral code, integrity, and honor, and then he does something completely out of that range, be it because it's a depressional phase, be it because of drugs, somebody put something in his blunt, whatever it may be it he's grieving, be it money problems, be it all of the above all at once, midlife crisis, I don't know. But it's simply a phase, then yes, once he comes out of that phase, he's going to regret losing you. Now, once again, that does not mean you need to give him a second chance, because to every action there's a reaction. We all have consequences for our actions, our behavior, and that may be one of them. And especially if you're not married, she was married, but especially if you're not married, you didn't commit through thick and thin. So that's just the price he's gonna have to pay if he did enough to push you away in that phase of his life. Now, the second way is kind of similar, but if a guy met you too early in his developmental manhood. We kind of talked about this one on the video about a man not being mature enough to handle you. But this is especially true for guys who are under the age of 25 or at least 30 years old. When he's still becoming the kind of man that he wants to be, it's totally possible for a guy to meet a woman who he has a taste for her personality, but has not yet developed the palate to appreciate her character. So he'll come along and they'll have great times and they'll have great jokes, even great sex and things of that nature, but he has not yet developed the capacity to truly care for her in the way that she needs over the long term. Once again, even if he does grow up, in which I would imagine he will, if he's, if he's growth oriented, that is not a reason for you to go back. It just is what it is. Thirdly, and I think this actually happens the most often, is whenever there's something holding the two of you back in your relationship on the guy's behalf, and there's only one thing that's going to get him over that hump, and that's the pain of losing you. Like, say for instance, a lot of guys, and this wouldn't really apply to her so much, but for those of y'all just in relationships, if you ever dealt with a guy who had like a fear of commitment, what's happening whenever a guy fears commitment is he's letting the fear, a hypothetical fear, what hasn't even happened yet, a fear of a certain pain on the other side of marriage, he's letting that keep him from going to marriage and saying, you know what, I'd rather choose my for sure comfort right here and now of what is this relationship, i.e. complacency, you know what I'm saying? But what it would take for him to get over that hump, and what a lot of times happen to guys who realize this too late, is the for sure and right now pain of losing his woman overriding that hypothetical fear of what could come in marriage. Sometimes it's legitimate. Sometimes you have a guy who grew up in a household, his parents got divorced and it effed him up, or he's seen one too many stories about a woman taking a man's money or getting complacent and letting herself go. Like as men, we weren't really sold on all the benefits of marriage. So when you say marriage to a man, a lot of times that's not the first thing that comes to his mind is all the benefits. What comes to mind is all those horrors, how his life is over and she can take this and she has power and blah, 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 blah. So what a lot of times it takes is for him to get to a place where, damn, this right here, right now, what I know is painful, what I'm feeling right now, can't be much worse than what would be on the other side of marriage. Now, with that being said, don't make the mistake if this is you, ladies. Don't make the mistake of giving a guy a chance because now he's for real. Now he's for sure. Now this is the same guy. He's just ready to commit because he doesn't need necessarily marry you as in putting a ring on your finger and signing any papers. When you get married, and I've talked about this before, man, that's just the beginning of the journey. You have to buy into an actual marriage in order for it to be a healthy marriage. Like it's not enough to just jump the broom. There are certain conversations you got to have. The way that you structure your relationship meetings, yes, I believe every relationship and marriage should have meetings just like businesses, successful businesses have. There's a way that you got to set the relationship membrane, and that's whether you're married or not married. I go into full detail about all of this in order to create a healthy relationship in my book, Don't Forget Your Crown. So if you haven't gotten it yet, get it now at the link in the caption because it's still 50% off, but that ends soon. But the moral of the story is this. Regardless if a man regrets losing you or not, you don't want to be with a man who is driven by regret. You want to be with a man who is driven by ways he can appreciate you. So it never comes to that. But y'all let me know what you think in the comments. And again, don't forget your crown, 50% off at the link in the caption. Holla at y'all later. Peace.